Hey all you cool cats and kittens. Today we're going to write equations in point slope form. So we are continuing in chapter 4. Remember, we're skipping around a little bit from chapter 3 to chapter 4. So today we have a new form, which is point slope. And the form that we have is y minus y1 equals m, remember m is your slope, times x minus x1. So remember x1 and y1, that's just your x value and your y value in your point. So here it says a linear equation written in the form y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 is in point slope form. The line passes through this point, so x1 and y1, and the slope of the line is m. So m is our slope, and x1 and y1 is our point. Okay, so if we're going to use this form to write an equation, we want to first find the slope of the line, and then we're going to use the slope of the line and one of the points to write an equation. So we only need the slope and we need 1 point. We don't need the y-intercept for this form. So our first example, we have write an equation in point slope form of the line that passes through the point -8, 3 and has a slope of 1/4. So let's write out a couple things here. So we have our m is equal to our slope, so 1/4. And then our point, so x1 comma y1 is -8, 3. Okay, so now we have our m, we have our x1, and we have our y1. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug it into this form. So we have y minus y1, which is 3, equals m, which is 1/4, times x minus x1, which is -8. And now we're just going to take what we have and just condense it a little bit. So we're just going to simplify. So I'm going to leave this y minus 3 equals 1/4 times x. And then now I know if I'm subtracting a negative, I'm really just adding. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And now what I want to do, I have this 1/4 on the outside of these parentheses here. And so whenever I have that, I know that that is telling me to distribute this 1/4 into each term. So I'm going to have y minus 3. So I'm just rewriting that down. And then I'm going to do 1/4 times x, which gives me 1/4 x. And now I'm going to add 1/4 times 8, which I know that whenever I'm multiplying by a fraction of 1/4, I'm really just dividing by 4. So I'm going to take 8 and I'm going to divide it by 4. So 8 divided by 4 gives me +2. So I will end up with y minus 3 equals 1/4 x plus 2. Okay. Now I'm going to write an equation in point slope form given this graph. So I'm given 2 points here. I don't know my slope right off the bat, but I do have 2 points. So one of the ways that you could find your slope is using this equation. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or you could just look at this graph and see, okay, my rise is 1, 2, 3, 4. So -4 over my run, which is 1, 2. So I have -4 over 2. I can simplify this a little bit further and say -4 divided by 2 is -2. Okay, now I'm going to use point slope form again, and I'm just going to use one of the points. And I notice that this point has a negative in it, so I'm just going to use the point that has both positive values in it. So again, I'm just using this form up here, and I'm going to plug in my values. So my x1 and my y1, I'm going to use the 0.12. Okay, now I'm just going to plug that in. So I will get y minus 2 equals -2 times x minus 1. Remember, the very tricky part about this form is that it has the negatives in there. I'm subtracting here, I'm not adding. So when I plug it in, make sure that you are subtracting, you're not adding. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify this a little bit further because I can distribute this -2 in. So I will get y minus 2 equals -2 times x gives me -2x. And then I'm going to distribute -2 to the -1. So -2 times -1 gives me +2. And I will get y minus 2 equals -2x plus 2. Okay. We just have one more example for our notes today, and so this is just written in function notation. So remember, when we see function notation, this reads as f of 4 equals -2, and f of 8 equals 4. And so remember, this is my input, and this is my output. So I can write down my points from this as 4, -2, and 8, 4. So now I'm just given 2 points, and I'm going to write an equation in point-slope form, but I need to find my slope first. So I'm going to use that equation that I wrote down up here. So I'm going to use that down here. So I'm going to rewrite it for you. So we have m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And now I'm just going to plug in values. So my y2 is my second y value, so I have 4 minus my first y value, which is -2, over my second x value, which is 8, minus my first x value, which is 4. Okay, now I'm going to simplify this. 4 minus a negative, I'm really adding, so 4 plus 2 gives me 6 over 8 minus 4, which is 4, and I can simplify that to 3/2. Okay, so now that I have my slope, I can use whichever point I would like. And again, since it doesn't matter which point I use, I'm going to use the point that has all positive values rather than this, because this has a negative value. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to plug that into my formula, and I will get y minus 4 equals 3/2 times x minus 8. Remember, the tricky part here is to keep these negatives here. I'm subtracting, and so I need to make sure that I'm including that sign. And so now I'm just going to simplify this, and so I'm going to write this up here. So I have y minus 4, so I need a little bit more room here. And then remember to put this in parentheses because we need to distribute that positive 3/2 into x minus 8. Okay, so now I'm not changing this. And I'm going to multiply 3/2 times x. So I have 3/2 times x. So I'll just leave it at that. And then I'm going to add 3/2 times -8. Okay, so now I'm multiplying here, and I know that whenever I multiply fractions, I multiply straight across, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this -8 over 1. So I'm making it a fraction so that I can easily multiply straight across. So I'm going to write this down, so I have y minus 4, not changing that, and 3/2 x, not changing that, and then now I'm going to multiply 3 times -8, which is going to give me -24. And then 2 times 1 is just going to give me 2. And now I know what -24 divided by 2 is, so I'm just going to simplify it to that. So I'm just going to keep rewriting everything here because I'm not changing anything here. And then, and then -24 divided by 2 is going to give me -12, so I'm just going to write minus 12. You could also write plus -12. That's the same thing as writing minus 12. All right, and that is your final equation.